who's doing the invocation?
Yes, Jerry Perry.
Jerry's here. Where's Reverend Parrott? Is he here?
I believe he is, sorry.
Is Reverend Parrott here?
I believe he is.
Reverend Parrott, oh. Okay. Please stand for the invocation, be led by Reverend Jerry Parrott, somebody of God. Thank you, Reverend Parrott.
Pray with me. Gracious Father, we gather here today to seek divine guidance for the decisions that are going to be made this evening. So often our human wisdom falls short of your wisdom and will, and that is why we seek your guidance this evening. There will always be certain situations and issues that our city commissioners are faced with that have no solid answers or simple solutions that will make everyone happy. Even Jesus, your son, couldn't please everyone. So for this reason, they need your guidance to help make decisions that will be good for all the people, for today, tomorrow, and in the future. Even though they are servants of the people, each member of this commission is responsible for their own personal convictions and standards that they must be true to. May your presence be with them all this evening. For this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Parrott. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to be done by Commissioner Katie Hedden.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, clerk, please call roll.
Commissioner Roach?
Yes.
Commissioner Haynes?
Here.
Commissioner Bowers? Here. Commissioner Hadden? Here. Mayor May?
Here. We do have a quorum. We'll entertain any motion on the minutes from May 13th special, May 20th special, and the second May 20th special, May 29th special, June 10th special meeting, and the June 10 work session.
Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes of those meetings you just identified.
Moved by Commissioner Bowers, second by Commissioner Hayden. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Roach?
Yes.
Commissioner Haynes?
Yes.
Commissioner Bowers?
Yes.
Commissioner Hadden?
Yes.
Mayor May?
Yes, those are approved. First item tonight, we have some ceremonial items. Pleased to report that we have 2 promotions in the fire department, and we will actually take those. We'll come forward. The chief and I will ask that Sergeant Brian Perry and Firefighter 2 Patrick Clayton come forward. Sergeant Perry is going to be promoted to lieutenant, and Firefighter Clayton will be promoted to sergeant. And if any family members would like to come forward, I know we've arranged for certain folks from each family to come forward, so please come forward and we'll make the promotions.
Thanks, Mayor. Tonight, as the mayor said, we have 2 promotions. First, we're going to recognize Sergeant Brian Perry, who's being promoted to lieutenant tonight. He's been with us for 14 years. Got promoted to sergeant back in '04, I believe. He has served as acting lieutenant several times. He's always done an excellent job for us, so I'm proud to be able to promote him tonight to the rank of lieutenant. He has asked that his wife pin his collar pins on him, and I will pin his badge on him, and Mary to shake hands. Been waiting on this for a while. Congratulations. And next we have firefighter Patrick Clayton, who has only been with us almost 3 years now, but getting promoted this quickly to sergeant just shows what an excellent committed employee he has been. He's been actively involved. Matter of fact, I thought it was going to be late. I just had to call him to get out of paramedic class. He's one of our current paramedic students, and he's excelling in that job. So I'm proud tonight to promote him to the rank of sergeant. His father, Battalion Chief Tony Clayton, Battalion Chief of Montgomery County, would like to put his badge on. I think that's pretty appropriate. Happy to let you do that. And his wife is going to take care of his fellow tenants tonight, Sarah.
I think I'm supposed to draw blood when you do this.
Well, if you're the Battalion, you probably have blood on.
Blood wings off.
Maybe we'll plan on that when he next week. Congratulations, sir. Pretty good.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Congratulations, thank you.
And I'd also just like to mention that on the agenda tonight, under personnel action, is the retirement of Lieutenant Jack Williams. Even though he's not here, I think he deserves recognition that he served 20 years with this department. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Just bear with us for 1 second. All right. Next item is citizen comments. This would be the time if there's issues that folks would like to address. Did you say something? One of the commissioners? I'm sorry. Joke. If folks are here that want to speak on an issue, and we do 5 minutes, the city attorney, city solicitor will keep time for me, so sometimes I don't pay as close attention to the clock as he does, because he's got a stopwatch, I guess. And he'll let us know, so we just ask that you please keep your comments to the 5 minutes. Ms. Ernst, just please state your name for the record. You don't have to state your address, but just if you're here to speak on a issue, please let us know what that issue is. If you're here speaking on behalf of a group, please let us know what that group is.
My name is Berea Ernst, and I'm a member of the Frankfort Fairness Steering Committee here to speak about the fairness ordinance under consideration. Frankfort Fairness represents 150 active supporters, 24 local businesses, and we have garnered 877 likes on Facebook. I'm also here to answer any questions that any of you on the commission might have for us as a group. And we would like to request that the following statement be read into the record. Some members of the City Commission, as well as members of the general public, have either asked for real stories of sexual orientation and gender identity discrimination in Frankfort, or have concluded it doesn't exist because they haven't heard of any related problems. The reason for this is simple. People are afraid to speak out about their personal experiences of discrimination, afraid they will be labeled and further discriminated against, and this particularly exists in a city like Frankfort, where without fairness protections, so many fear being dismissed unfairly or overlooked for promotions because they have been in the past. Anti-LGBT discrimination is often explicit or implied. When someone is overlooked for promotions in the workplace, when a potential renter is declined residency, and when a customer of a restaurant is refused service or is rudely served. The Frankfort Fairness Committee is offering the following anonymous testimonies as proof that discrimination does in fact exist in Frankfort. A young man was driving back into Frankfort after visiting his dad in Nashville. He began receiving threatening texts from an unknown individual with an Indiana cell phone number. The individual called him queer and faggot and threatened to kill him, stating that he knew where he lived. The young man drove straight to the Frankfort Police Department. The officer who came to the lobby said there was nothing he could do because he would have to subpoena the phone records to find the number. The young man was astounded that a threat to his life did not warrant subpoenaing phone records. Upon contacting the FBI, he was told that local or state authorities should handle the case. But in the end, the FBI did contact the threatening individual. Testimony 2. A young employee who conducted manual labor tasks alongside his other coworkers said the first day of his employment, one of the older employees asked him if he had been saved. He said, "I was raised Catholic." To that, the man replied, "Well, that's better than nothing." After a few weeks, he could tell that his coworkers were talking about him behind his back. A group of them asked him one day if he was gay. He said even though their tone of voice was not necessarily aggressive, their obvious attitude and posture were. He didn't know what to say because he was so afraid and is unable to remember exactly what he did say because he felt sick and scared and quickly left. He never returned to that workplace because he was genuinely afraid and fearful for his safety. Number 3. Late one weekend night, a young adult gay man was in downtown Frankfort when there were no other people or cars in sight. He was driving on Ann Street toward Main Street and was in the right lane to turn right onto Main. Because he failed to put on his right turn signal in the mandatory turn right lane, a state trooper flashed his lights behind him. After addressing his failure to turn on his right turn signal, the trooper began questioning him about his bumper stickers, which said things like "Celebrate diversity" and "Hatred is not a family value." There were 10 different but related bumper stickers, and the trooper questioned him about each one, wanting to know what they meant, which obviously had nothing to do with the traffic violation. Number 4. When a local high school teacher initiated and coordinated the school's first diversity rally to teach her students about the importance of understanding and appreciating differences in others, the principal told her to not include gays and lesbians and to steer clear of religion. The teacher told the principal she would call the press if she forbade her to not include these types of diversity. No more was said by the principal, and the teacher believed her tenure played a role in the principal's remaining silence on the issue. Number 5, a woman worked for an independent company and believed she was fired due to sexual orientation discrimination. A co-worker told the boss that the woman was gay and she was dismissed within a few days for no apparent reason. And finally, another employee was harassed into resigning from a high-level position after her supervisors became aware of her sexual orientation. The harassment ranged from false accusations on work performance to mean-spirited statements about the company she kept. A Frankfort Fairness representative spoke with 3 separate same-sex couples at the downtown concert on Friday evening, June 21st. During each discussion, our representative informed them that the commissioners are concerned that there is really no need for this fairness ordinance unless they can hear specific incidences of discrimination. Without exception, each couple responded immediately and strongly. At least one person in each couple said he or she had experienced more than one incidence of bias. We gave them your addresses and encouraged them to tell their stories, so hopefully your inboxes reflect this. However, if they do not, we'd like you to understand it could be out of fear of retribution. Were there a fairness ordinance in place?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry. Can you wrap it up? They said it's 5 minutes, so take about 30 seconds if you don't mind. And then you can get that for the record so the commissioners can still see it.
Okay.
Sorry.
On behalf of Frankfort Fairness, I would like to thank the Commission for your time and patience on this issue. It is deeply and widely felt by many members of our community, and we very much appreciate your work on this.
Thank you so much. Did you have that you want to put in the record?
I do. Do I need to submit it right now?
Typically.
This evening.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Okay, anyone else? Oh, okay. You can go, Miss Murphy. Miss Murphy, you go. And even though I know most of y'all by first name, I still always call you by.
I'm Eunice Monfort. I just want to respond to a couple of things that was just said. One of the things that she was talking about was that when someone had a problem when they went to the police, that the police said they weren't able to respond to the situation because they had to have there were certain priorities and protocols they had to follow. I'd like to address that in another situation. A few years ago, my daughter was being stalked. She had a restraining order against her. She also went to the police, and the police also told her that in spite of the fact that she was being stalked and there was a restraining order against her, and the person was stalking her right then, that until he actually did something to her, there was nothing they could do. The laws were on the books, but there were protocols in place that have to be followed. And that situation is similar to what the lady just spoke about, that there are laws on the books, and even though I thought that was outrageous, the police said that is the protocol and they can't do anything about the situation until something actually happens. Don't agree with it, but that's what it is. I would also like to talk about what I said the previous meeting, and that was that I am absolutely for equal rights for all people under the law. I am not, however, in favor of special rights, and I want to refer to a case that was in the Lexington Herald last week that I think addresses this issue very well. That is, that there was a case in the Lexington Herald about a gay man who was attacked by some guys, and they said specifically for the reason that he was gay. The laws that are currently on the books were followed. Those people were arrested. They were brought to trial. They were convicted, and now they're going to be serving jail time. The law worked just like it's supposed to. All I'm saying is that we don't need additional laws on the books when the laws we have on the books already are sufficient to provide equal protection under the law. Now, there's no way that you're ever going to, with any law, prohibit somebody from having a bad attitude, or they may not like something or other. There's no way to solve that problem with a law. But we do have sufficient laws on the books to deal with discrimination of any kind toward anyone. The case that was in the Lexington Herald yesterday is prime proof last week, is proof of that situation. And I would just say that we don't need additional books on the law to provide equal protection under the law.
Thank you very much. Anyone else before we move? Oh,
My name is Angie Lawrence. I have worked for state and federal government for years, and I can tell you, just to address a couple of your issues, that there's also reverse discrimination. There have been several instances where just a lousy worker, and because they were a lousy worker and they were gay, stuff was not addressed. There were allegations against sexual harassment because they were gay. Nothing was done. There were, I can't think of what they're called right now, but grievances. There were grievances filed several times against one particular person that I know of because she was a jerk, quite frankly. And because she was a lesbian, nothing was done about it. And I know that for a fact. I was a supervisor. I've had to deal with stuff like that, so I know that's the case. And again, as far as the school stuff, to me, it's reverse discrimination. What if you don't want your child to hear about diversity, about stuff like that? What if you have issues with that, for whatever reason, and you don't want them to hear about that because it's being pushed now. It's kind of on the agenda. What about those persons' rights? So I would ask that you consider that as well, because it works both ways.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Erin Wright. I wasn't going to speak until I heard some of the other people speak, but I just wanted to give something to the group here for food for thought for those who are opposing this Fairness Act. What if it was reversed? What if you were fighting to marry a man or a woman and you didn't have the same rights as the gay couples did? Would you want to sit here and listen to us defend why you shouldn't have those rights? Just put the shoe on the other foot for 5 seconds and see how it would make you feel.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
My name is Ann Gordon, And I simply want to say that I would hope each of you take the name of the ordinance to heart, and that is a fairness ordinance. And how on earth can our government be against fairness? Now, no law you pass is ever going to be perfect. And there's always going to be reverse or adverse actions as well as good coming out of it. But I just find it hard to believe, because I pretty much know all this body, at least all the elected members now. And I know you're good, fair people. And I just don't, of course, I might be able to argue the details if I'd seen a draft of something. But access around here is a little difficult. And I had 10 years with the Lexington Fayette Irving County government, so I understand both sides of that issue. But, so I can't talk about any of the specifics. But let's lead the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And let's say that we truly love each other as God wanted us to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just as a point, we did have one draft on our City of Frankfort website. We put that on there after the public meeting we had 2 weeks ago. But understand too that there's not anything that we're not taking a vote tonight. And I think tonight you'll hear commissioners talk about what each commissioner thinks should or should not be in a ordinance to be considered, if there's three, to move forward and consider that at a future meeting.
Mike Lawrence, I think this is like deja vu, but I just want to say a few words again about the fact that, in my estimation, this city cannot afford this ordinance. There are too many costs that this city is overrun with right now, and I believe this ordinance will increase that cost. And over a period of time, it seems to me the city of Frankfort would be better served dealing with the sewage problem in this city, along with a number of other problems that exist that cost the taxpayer in this city a great deal of money. And to me, this is an issue that is being addressed at the federal and the state level in many states throughout this country. There are laws about discrimination out the yin-yang. And the fact of the matter is, the city needs to get about running the city. They don't need to be so concerned with social issues that we pass ordinances to supposedly fix all these problems that in the end it will not fix in the first place. I've spent 30 years trying to make government accountable, and I know what it's like to do so. It's a very difficult situation. Bureaucracies grow, and they get bigger, and they get bigger on their own. And that's the nature of them. They're self-perpetuating. And in my estimation, you don't have the money for this.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone? Okay.
I'm Roger Lang, I'm attorney here in Frankfort, and I'm for this ordinance. I think we've needed it for a long time. We need it all over America. And I think it's absolutely self-evident, anyone that has gone to high school, that this kind of discrimination goes on all the time in workplaces, in places where people receive services, in places where people try to rent buildings. This is nothing new. It's nothing mysterious. This has gone on for hundreds of years. I mean, just because people aren't burned at the stake anymore doesn't mean everything's just fine. Now, one good reason why the city needs to pass this ordinance is that if you don't pass it, you're approving the discrimination of the people that are against it. You're approving tacitly bigotry. And you know what? Things can go on for years and years, and people can believe in them, but the Third Reich proved that a whole country, an entire people, can be totally wrong. And up in our cemetery, which is one of the most beautiful ones in the state, we have a very beautiful Confederate memorial. And you know what? There were people that truly believed in Confederacy, truly believed in the South, truly believed that slavery was a wonderful thing. And you know what? They were idiots. They were just flat out idiots. They were just plain wrong. And they were wrong in 1775, and they were wrong until they finally ended it in 1865. Because it's just plain basically wrong to treat people that badly. Now, are we going to hang around in the past? Or are we going to move with the rest of America? Vico has figured it out, city of Vico. Population 335 people. You know, I don't know how much discrimination is there, but they don't want any of it. Now, I really do not understand when Louisville and Lexington, and we're part of that same economy, have this ordinance that we can't. And the only reason why we can't have it is that we are going to be stuck in the groove of the past. And I don't think we can afford that. People are watching this town. People are watching this town and towns all over America for this kind of ordinance. And believe me, if we don't pass it, we'll be bypassed when it comes to investment. You better believe it. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Timothy Sandifer, and I grew up here in Frankfort. And between the years of 1975 and 1977, I attempted suicide 3 times because I didn't know how or have any role models or leadership to deal with these issues. I didn't come back here until 1999 till my stepfather died. And at that time I thought I might stay here in Frankfort, and I went to rent a house, and the man told me that he didn't rent to people with my agenda, and I wasn't sure what he was talking about. He didn't know my political background, my religious background, and then he came out, queers, he said. I left Kentucky and didn't come back here until 2004, and I was here for 2 years. Then decided I didn't want to be here because I felt that it was still as it was and as it had been when I was growing up. I came back in 2009 because my mother was battling pancreatic cancer, and I took her back and forth from Nashville for those treatments. I took a job here at a chain restaurant. I've been in the restaurant business 35 years, and was cornered in the walk-in twice by one person, and the management did nothing about it. They brought in a new assistant manager to join the team, and he stood around his first day telling fag jokes. Okay, I resigned from that job. I'm here just to ask you all to open your hearts and minds and understand that fairness is important for everyone. We had suffrage for women, Emancipation Proclamation for African Americans, and I think that we need to really open our hearts up and address this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete. Anyone else? Oh, okay.
My name is Ronald Crawford, and I live here in Frankfort. The question I have to you, ladies and gentlemen, are what are the opponents of extending this ordinance afraid of? Lexington has an ordinance, Louisville has an ordinance. This is the capital city of Kentucky. We need to get in, to take a lead, and hopefully other cities in Kentucky will follow. But we need to recognize the rights of everyone, and extending this ordinance will do just that. And I urge you to pass this and make it a law in the books. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, okay.
I'm Michelle Fitzpatrick, and I'm pro-fairness because it's the only way to go, and it's because of the riots in the 60s. I used to live in Detroit at that time, and it was no fun at all. And it was because of fairness between races, and this is between fairness and sexualities. You know, it's personal. It is personal. It's very personal, and I don't see why you can't okay it, because it's fairness. It's a good way to go. And Stonewall, back when the police were beating the homosexuals, and happiness, and they still, not all of them, praise the Lord, but some of them just beat them, and then other people laugh, or other police officers laugh. And it's gotta stop. And the way to stop it is to pass this ordinance, and for other cities to pass the ordinance, and then it will become regulated, just like black and white, and red and white, and red and brown, and Chinese, and I don't know. But I do know that you really should pass the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
My name's Louis McLean, and I've listened to both sides of this thing for a couple of sessions and things now, and I'll have to say that I do agree. I agree that we're looking at a community that wants fairness, and they want it for everyone. So once again, I'll offer you an option. I know that there's been direction about drafts. I do agree that it would be virtually impossible to draft anything that's going to make it fair for everyone. So if you want true feedback from what the community feels, and it's going to take some effort, but put it on the ballot so that you don't discriminate against anyone, and everyone has the same opportunity to go in, pull the curtain, and vote their heart. And that way that they're not discriminated against absolutely at all, because everybody's got the same opportunity. You'll get true feedback from that. And they won't be discriminated against because who they are, what they believe, where they work, where they live, their business, whatever the case may be. So there are options to consider, and I'll throw that out there again. If you do truly want to be fair to everyone, then put it on the ballot and let us vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? We're taking our time on this. This is an important issue. Okay, if not, then we'll get into our agenda items. We have a discussion under old business for the proposed or possible proposed ordinance. But first, okay, we'll get into the second reading of ordinances. First one is 4.1, and I'll ask for the solicitor to read it by title and summary only.
4.1 by title, an ordinance appropriating the revenue to be received by the City of Frankfort for fiscal year 2013-2014. By summary, this ordinance appropriates revenue to be received by the City of Frankfort for fiscal year 2013-2014 in accordance with the budget submitted and hereby approved.
Okay, are there any questions on 4.1? Not, are you ready to make a motion?
I'm sorry, did you say make a motion?
If y'all are ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, Mayor.
Moved by
That was
Commissioner Hedden,
Approved.
Second.
second by Commissioner Haynes. Any discussion? Commissioner Roach, did you have?
No, I just, when I vote, I just say something. That's fine. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Seeing no discussion, clerk, please call roll.
Mr. Roach?
I'm going to vote no, and I just want to say real quick that I think our people have done a great job, and I also realize that our raises have been few and far between the last 4 or 5 years, but I just think as a matter of policy that or principle, whatever you want to call it, that when you raise taxes as of January 1st on the community, and then you give a raise that's largely funded with those extra tax revenues for people that haven't gotten a raise, that just doesn't make sense to me. I think we're going to be fine, the budget will be fine, but I can't vote for it because of that.
Mr. Haynes?
Yes.
Mr. Bowers?
Yes, there are some things in here that if it were left to me personally, I would do a little differently. But when we look at the budget, we're looking at the overall budget. We're not looking at little pieces here and little pieces there. And our staff has done a really good job this term, as they always do. So at least as long as I've been up here. So I'm voting yes, and I'm not going to vote no on just one little piece. Although, Commissioner Roach, I admire you for doing that. But I just have to vote on the whole budget as a whole. So my vote is yes.
Commissioner Hayden? Yes. Mayor May?
Yes, and that is adopted. Would say too, thanks to our city manager for coming in and working on his first budget preparation with us and involving the staff, our department heads. We thank you all for making the tough decisions to make this a balanced budget. And actually, it's going to be a pro-growth budget by a small amount. And we look forward to seeing it carried out. I know we'll have some changes probably during the year, but that's okay. And so we'll move on to 4.2. Second reading. This deals with an amendment to Chapter 50, which is the garbage and solid waste, Sections 50. And I'll ask this to be read by title and summary only.
Ordinance 4.2 by title, an ordinance amending Chapter 50, Garbage, Solid Waste, Sections 50.02, 50.03, 50.06, 50.10, and 50.14 of the City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances. By summary, this ordinance amends Chapter 50 of the City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances by specifically amending Sections 50.02, .03, .06, .10, and 50.14.
We've heard summary and title. Are there any questions on this ordinance? Not, are you ready for a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Roach.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bowers. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call roll.
Mr. Roach?
Yes.
Mr. Haynes?
Yes.
Mr. Bowers?
Yes.
Mr. Hedden? The next, I just want to make this public as well, since there's a lot of public here. I vote yes, but the next unlimited pickup days would be the week of July 7th. Is that correct?
We'll answer that in a second. We'll go ahead and you
I think
explain
that's
your
what
vote.
the website said. I just want to just throw that out there to let people know, because last time it was poorly
Wait a
advertised.
minute. I can't have, we're doing a roll call, but after that, I'll let you come up. That's why I was saying, well, she's explained her vote. Sorry for the procedural. Go ahead and finish explaining your vote.
Yes. Mayor May?
Yes, is adopted. Okay, now there's a question. Now you can come forward and answer the question on the next. Sorry, I have to follow those rules. Well, not sorry I have to follow the rules. I'm sorry I had to tell you you had to sit down.
Sorry about that. I am Derek Gray. I'm in the Public Works Department, and I actually have a list of the dates here that we will be advertising for those. The most recent one now is set for July 30th through the August 2nd, September the 10th through September the 13th, November 12th through 15th, And then into 2014, we have January 14 through January 17, March 11 through 14, and May 13 through 16. And we plan on having these advertised by a possible radio spot, newspaper definitely, and there will be small tagged flyers that are be hanged on each of the recycle bins all throughout the city.
Could I ask that the commission get an email with all those dates?
Yes, ma'am,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Any questions?
Trust is everyone's okay with that? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next item is going to be 4.3, and this is going to be a first reading. And I'll ask the solicitor to read this by title and summary only.
4.3 by title, an ordinance to amend the City of Frankfort's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 152, by amending the City of Frankfort zoning regulations, Article 17, Article Architectural Review Board, Section 17.02 and 17.03 of the City of Frankfort's zoning ordinance. Summary. This ordinance amends the city zoning ordinance, Article 17, Architectural Review Board, by amending the makeup of eligible members and the number of members on the board from 5 to 7 members.
Has its first reading. And were there any questions that commissioners have? Commissioner Roach?
I just had a question. You know, when we first looked at this, we talked about the criteria by which they would be selected, and that somehow doesn't seem to be in this. So I didn't know if that had, you remember that, you know, maybe one needed to be an architect, one they need to live in that district, those type of things. And so I was wondering if we have any criteria for selection.
To answer that, if you look in section, in Article 17 under 1702, and then if you look under membership under subsection A, where it strikes out the wording where it talks about removing that recognized historic preservation group, that are preservation related, and also removes the requirement that we have a member from the American Institute of Architects to try to help. That's what the ordinance was trying to get at, or is trying to get at, because we have limited members in our community.
So broadens the membership.
It broadens the membership, because the restriction of having a member of the American Institute of Architects that resides in the community.
I wanted to make
that's
sure that was
difficult.
in that, so that's what we're
That's in
following.
there.
Okay, thank you.
And that's under 1702 sub A. In the tab 3.
Thanks, Rod.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, we will now move, we have no more ordinances to look at, no orders. Resolutions, we have Resolution 6.1 that authorizes the mayor to enter into an agreement with Department of Local Government for an energy efficiency and conservation grant to execute any documents which are deemed necessary by DLG to facilitate this project and to act as the authorized correspondent for this project. Are there any question on this? This would be a grant request of $28,000, and the grant does require a 20% match from the city, which would be $7,200. And this does require action.
I make a motion we approve.
Moved by Commissioner Roach,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Hidden. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Roach?
Yes.
Commissioner Haynes?
Yes.
Commissioner Bowers?
Yes.
Commissioner Hayden?
Yes.
Mayor May?
Yes, and thanks to our staff. We have had one commissioner request that item 7.19 be removed from the consent orders. Are there any other members who would wish anything removed from consent? And if not, at the end of the consent calendar items, if a member will make a motion to approve and a second, then all members who signify their presence will be considered to vote in the affirmative on the consent calendar unless they file proper vote modification forms with the city clerk. I'm not sure if there's any vote modification forms. Okay, so 719 has been removed, and it will be under, we'll put that under new business. If there's no objection, it'll be 10.3 under new business. Okay. You may read the consent calendar for us.
Thank you, Mayor May. Item 7.1 is a $300,000 grant application for self-contained breathing apparatus in our fire department. The application is to the Department of Human Services and FEMA. There would be a required match of $30,000 or 10% should we receive the grant. Item 7.2 is to declare surplus and dispose of two 2002 ambulances, also in our emergency medical service fire department, and also a 1995 transit bus in that department as well. Item 7.3 is to request authorization to enter condemnation proceedings for property located at 1029 Louisville Road. The condemnation is needed to replace an aging sanitary sewer station. We are looking to purchase 1/16 of an acre, and our negotiations thus far have failed to reach a compromise or negotiation. Item 7.4 is to release a utility easement at 30 Woodstock Court. Our sanitary sewer department reports there is no need for this particular easement. 7.5 is to purchase two new gearboxes from WSG and Solutions for the bar screens located at the sanitary sewer plant. The amount would be $32,142.04. The bar screens do remove large debris items prior to the process. Item 7.6 is to purchase workers' compensation excess insurance. The city is a self-funded program for the amount of $66,000 from Midwestern employers, and this is to provide coverage up to $500,000 per incident per employee. 7.7 is for an $8,820 professional service agreement with Sherman Castor and Bernhardt for Capitol Avenue Pump Station roof repairs. This facility is about 30 years old and the roof is in need of repairs. Item 7.8 is recycled material hauling contract to Republic Service for $139 per trip. And we are estimating that the amount of trips would be about 4 per week. I do want to point out that currently the city staff has been hauling to and from Lexington. Our gas cost alone is about $530 compared to the estimated $556 for the total. So we're going to save not only on the gas, but the wear and tear and the vehicle expense, and not to mention the staff time. I just want to take a second and commend the staff, Public Works Director Tom Bradley and Solid Waste Superintendent David Sams. This is a type of efficiency and productivity that we're looking at to improve in this organization. I think it's just a fine example. Item 7.9, $91,600 electric contract to Arts Electric for 8 pump stations to add generator connections to minimize the effect of power outages. Currently, those pump stations do not have generation capacity, so we'll be adding the capacity to hook up generators in case of the power outage. 7.10 is an amendment to contract with GRW. The amendment is the amount of $5,000 for construction services during the grit building channel improvements. The commission approved a $28,000 original design contract. The amendment is for $5,000 for a total of $33,200 for the GRW. 7.11 is amendment number 1 with Otis Engineering for $3,450 to provide final construction drawings and bid documents and resident review to retrofit bypass connections for our sewer pump stations. There have been occasions where pumps have failed and we've had to bypass. This contract will allow us the ability to install pumps quickly and efficiently. Item 7.12 is to purchase 3 police interceptor units. The price per unit, including outfitting, is $40,269. The 3 units total, $120,809. We're purchasing 6 vehicles this year, 3 of which out of this current budget and 3 out of our next fiscal year. 7.13 is $135,020 professional services agreement with QK4 to video inspect the city's concrete sewer pipe. This is phase 4 and the final phase. The first 3 phases were also performed by QK4. 7.14 is a $423,467 contract with Advanced Paving and Construction for 1,250 feet of large diameter sewer in Blanton Acres. This is Phase 2 of a two-phase project. 4 bids were received on May 12th, and advanced paving was the low bid at $423,467. 7.15 is a $49,000 amendment, number 5, to professional services agreement with Hazen and Sawyer for construction administration and resident review to repair or replace an interceptor sewer from Swigert Avenue to the Kentucky River. The $49,000 would make the final contract amount $389,900. 7.16 is a $66,500 professional services agreement with, again, Hazen and Sawyer for engineering study for an inverted siphon behind Forest Villa Apartments. 12 firms submitted proposals, and Hazen and Sawyer was unanimously selected by our team. 7.17 is a $20,000 amendment number 2 to a professional services contract with HMB for miscellaneous engineering services for small sanitary sewer projects that we have from time to time. Previous agreements were approved in 2006 and 2012. The additional $20,000 will total a revised contract amount of $50,000. 7.18 is to renew a $42,046.68 contract with RCS Communication to provide 24/7 support of our 911, E911 related hardware and software. This happens to be the same price as the current fiscal year, no price increase. We're skipping 7.19. 7.2 is not to exceed $50,000 for a professional services agreement with Otis Engineering to provide easement acquisition services for various sewer projects. We've hired Otis in the past to provide the services for easements. They've worked very closely and very well with the city in this regard. 7.21, apply for $12,433 Edward Byrne Memorial JAG grant to purchase 3 mobile data units for our police vehicles. There is no match required. 7.22 is a $10,750 renewal of the Environmental Systems Research Institute. This is ESRI, Environmental Systems Research Institute for GIS software. This is the third of a 3-year contract. 7.23 is a $98,316 amendment to a contract with DLZ to provide design changes and construction administration of a sanitary sewer interceptor along Myrtle Avenue. The revised contract amount would be $376,549.50. 7.24 is not to exceed $250,000 amendment to contract with DLZ to provide wet weather or infiltration and inflow program oversight, including project scheduling, cost estimates, etc. We have worked with DLZ for the past several years in the same regard. This is in addition to an existing contract. 7.25 is to award $121,900 bid to Duke's Roofing. This includes alternate 1, which provides additional ceiling tiles and lighting here at City Hall, and for miscellaneous repairs to our IT building roof. There were 4 bids received. Duke was the low bid at the $121,900. 7.26 is a $600 rental agreement with the Kentucky Historical Society for the meeting room that we rented on June 10 for the fairness public hearing comments. 7.27 is a $2,900 to Integra Realty Resources for reappraisal of a property that the city owns at 117 and 122 Leonard Drive. The city is going to be auctioning that property, so we're looking to get an appraisal on its value.
Actually, Leonard Wood.
Leonard Wood, excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. 7.28 is a $213,302 contract amendment to provide additional stream restoration, vegetation, and plans for 2 additional bridges. The total, this total amount, the $213,000, would be paid by the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Wetland and Stream Mitigation Program, so there will be no cost to the city of Frankfort for that improvement. 7.29 is to purchase $33,000 BOMOG. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it is a roller for our asphalt operations, and this would be in our street department. We are using the state master agreement for the purchase of that roller. 7.30 would be to purchase a $39,000 Chevy one-ton panel pickup truck, also for our street department. And again, the city would be utilizing the state master agreement. And I might just point out, by utilizing the state master agreement, we save probably in the area of 10 to 20% off of the normal retail price. It allows us to purchase vehicles very efficiently and affordably. 7.31 is the purchase of pickup truck. It's a Chevrolet 2500 for our solid waste department, priced at $28,500. Again, that is through the state master agreement. And finally, under personnel, Mayor, we have several. First of all is appointment of Paul Scott in our Public Works Department. Paul will be a Public Works Tech 1. We have a resignation from Steven Strasberg in our Sewer Department. He is a plant operator. We have a resignation from Ty Camp in our Fire Department. He is a firefighter and EMT 2. We have retirement, and I think Chief Passage mentioned this earlier, from Jack Williams, Fire Lieutenant. He served with us for 22 years. We have a promotion of Brian S. Perry in our Fire Department from Sergeant to Lieutenant, mentioned earlier. Promotion of Patrick Clayton, firefighter, EMT 2 to Fire Sergeant. We mentioned that earlier. We have a promotion of Joe B. Sanderson in our Public Works Department. He's going to go from a Public Works Tech 2 to a Public Works Tech 3. And then we have a transfer of Thomas Tillett from our Public Works Department to Sanitation. And he's coming from Sanitation to Public Works as a Tech 2.
Okay.
My report, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Is there a motion to accept the consent items?
I make a motion.
Moved by Commissioner Oak, second by Commissioner Haynes. All those that signified their presence will be considered to vote in the affirmative. Since there are no vote notification papers, items 7.1 to 732 minus 7.19 are adopted. Next item, I would ask that consider the reappointment of James E. Terrell to a 4-year term to the Planning Commission. You should have received a copy of Mr. Terrell's resume and other information. Are there any?
I'll move that you go ahead and make that appointment.
I second it.
Moved by Commissioner Bowers, second by Commissioner Roach. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call roll.
Mr. Roach?
Yes.
Mr. Haynes?
Yes.
Mr. Bowers?
Yes.
Mr. Hayden?
Yes.
Mayor Nash?
Yes, and thank you all, and thanks to Mr. Terrell for his service. Next item is 9.1, discussion of fairness ordinances and resolution. We have had some discussions on this. Of course, we've had testimony in 3-4 meetings, and at this point, I'll ask commissioners if we want to talk about is there enough support or not enough support to move forward with an official draft. We had the draft that the city solicitor had provided previously, and then also, I believe, the information that we shared from the Human Rights Commission staff that took the ordinance that our solicitor had drafted and tweaked it a bit, whereas the original draft that our solicitor had given us also had wording similar to what WIBA was that would require a local Human Rights Commission to address all issues of any type of complaints on discrimination, and the other proposal removed the requirement that all cases be before the local, and it would only the local one would only deal with any types of sexual identity or gender complaints, and would keep the other complaints going back to the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. I know it's almost like you need a roadmap to keep up with it. But we can also start from scratch. Commissioner Roach.
Well, I just wanted to ask for a quick clarification. Well, one, I think you're right, Mayor. I think each of us needs to decide which way they think we should go as far as whether we should go forward or not, and why, because we have gotten a lot of input. I've got more input on this than every issue combined that I have dealt with in my short time on the commission. And then as far as the roadmap on the ordinances, I think we have an ordinance that city solicitor did, and then you all looked at that, and I think that was the one prior to the last discussion. And then I think there were 2 drafts, draft 1 and a draft 2, and I think there was a resolution, and then I think there were samples from the Fairness Organization. So is that kind of the way everybody remembers all of it?
Yes.
And specifically, what you had is you had the draft number 1, which was the draft based upon Louisville's fairness ordinance, which just had the anti-discrimination language in it. It did not have any enforcement mechanism in it. Okay, that was draft number 1. Draft number 2 was the city's current fair housing, public accommodations, and employment ordinance, which had the LGBT language added in, so that with respect to discrimination, it not only prohibited discrimination against the traditional categories that you think of when you consider discrimination, which is age, sex, race, age. Of course, that was over 40, and so the other categories, and that in the fair housing. When I took the City of Frankfort Fair Housing Ordinance and added in the LGBT language, I did not specifically address the enforcement mechanism there, but when you look at the city's Fair Housing Ordinance, what that provides for is the mayor would be the person that would accept complaints, and he could attempt to get the parties to conciliate, or he would appoint a fairness officer, and the fairness officer would attempt to get the parties to work out their differences. If not, of course, our current ordinance provides for filing a complaint with the State Human Rights Commission, and the State Human Rights Commission can hear the traditional discriminatory claims, but it does not have jurisdiction to hear LGBT claims. So we would have to tweak that ordinance to provide for, if you wanted the traditional discriminatory claims to go to the State Human Rights Commission, we would also have to add a separate complaint process where a hearing could be held by a board created by the City of Frankfort or a person designated by the City of Frankfort who would hear the LGBT complaints. Our current ordinance also provides for a complaint to be filed in the Franklin Circuit Court if someone wished to file a civil action against the alleged violator. So those were the two ordinances that I prepared. You also had an ordinance that was provided to you all by, I think, the State Human Rights Commission personnel took a shot at drafting the ordinance. It's about a 20-page ordinance, and they've got a number of definitions in there, and their remedy section or enforcement section provides for traditional, for the State Human Rights Commission to handle the traditional complaints of discrimination, and then the City of Frankfort would itself handle the complaints involving LGBT.
So do we have that, Mr. Do we have what you just said?
The mayor forwarded it to me, so I assume that he forwarded it to you all.
I don't have it.
Okay, all right.
Or I lost it, one of the other.
And I would say it's fairly similar to, it's kind of a melding of draft number 1 that I prepared with portions of the enforcement mechanism from our current fair housing code. And then the last thing that I drafted at the Commission's request was the resolution. And if, you know, I'm willing to discuss any of those sections or none of those sections, whatever the pleasure of the Commission is.
Well, Commissioner Roach still had the floor, and then I'll go to Commissioner Bowers. That's why I was asking while we were talking. I was asking if Commissioner Roach had any more questions. We weren't trying to hide anything. I was just asking if he was going to want to be called. So go ahead.
I don't have any, I think what we need to do, if everybody is on the same page as to what to do, I think we each need to say where we are and perhaps why, you don't need to say why. And then if there are sufficient support to go forward, then we need to have the city attorney help us in going through these ordinances, because I've read them several times and I've got a feeling that they're kind of hard to follow. And so he could maybe guide us on that, but I'll just jump in and say, Voltaire said that sometimes you have to agree to disagree. I've got between 300 and 400 emails on this issue, and I'm sure so is everybody else. They're running probably about 60 to 65% against, and the other 4. But that's meaningless to me, because it could be just the opposite, and I just haven't gotten as many emails from the other side. I've probably had about 100 phone calls. I've probably talked to about 25 people in person. So this is a contentious issue, and everyone is going to have to go with Voltaire's saying, because a lot of people are going to be disappointed. It's just as simple as that. Regardless of which position you're on, somebody's going to be disappointed. I guess one thing that, and I'll just say that if my side doesn't win, I'm not going to take my marbles and go home. We've got a lot to do the next couple of years, and we need to get on with it. So one thing that I've been astonished by is no one, to my knowledge, has given any input that's actually cited any ordinance language anywhere when they've said it. It's largely been, 3 or 4 paragraphs I'm for it, or 3 or 4 paragraphs I'm against it. But it's sort of the standard thing, so they're very similar. But I think both sides need to read ordinances, because it's a whole lot more complicated than the pro or the con side thinks. Let me just say that, having read the ordinances, it's not as simple as it sounds. So just to jump in, I'm against it. I believe it'll divide the community, and it has. I realize you sometimes have to divide a community when you're trying to do something, but I believe it's unnecessary to divide the community. I don't think it's needed or necessary. I know people think it is. Some people think that. But when the testimony was given at our first meeting of discussion, we were told that in a typical year there would be one example or one thing, and that over a 10-year period of time there might be one real big issue. For me, that's not worth all this trouble that we're having. So I don't think it's necessary. It's already, under executive order, outlawed at state government, so our biggest employer already has it outlawed. I've been in rental property since 1989, and I have never discriminated based on that. To be honest with you, we're just happy for people that can pay their rent. So I don't ever ask that question. I don't know any landlords that have, but I'm sure there are some. Don't know of any, and I know a lot of them. So I do not think this is something that happens that often. Do I say it's never happens? No, but it does not happen that often. And I think if you look at demographic data, you'll also see that based on income, that I don't think that lends much to that argument. I also think that we need to look at state law, and what does state law say? And I think most of you are familiar in 2004 that same-sex marriage was banned under the Constitution under a vote 3-1, 75% to 25%. That's not the same issue as this, but it's indirect. The Religious Restoration Act passed the General Assembly, and it overrode the governor's veto in the latest one. Now, what that means is that if you believe, let's say, for example, the Fairness Ordinance passes, and you happen to be a landlord or happen to be a business owner or happen to be hiring, you can not follow the Fairness Ordinance, because you can say that it is interfering with your religious beliefs. Now, the city then can sue, and the city attorney can explain this better than I can. The city can then sue, but they will have to find a high standard to say that there is a compelling state interest to override that individual person's liberty for religion. And I think that is going to be a mess. And one of the reasons why the state passed that law was to avoid that. So I think that's going to be a problem. I don't think we want to have the expense. When we go to litigate, it's going to cost money. It's going to be expensive. I don't believe, given our budget constraints, that makes sense to spend the money. I think another issue, and I'll be quick because I know this is something people got a lot to talk about. There is an intrinsic problem between liberty and equality. It's always been there, and it always will. So where one side will believe on this issue that equality is paramount, and that having equality is more important than liberty. I believe you should err on the side of liberty. And for this issue, what you're saying is that somebody's liberty can be infringed because of the fairness ordinance, so that they must follow it, even though, and that they don't have the liberty in their housing or their employment, in their business, to discriminate. You're basically saying they cannot, and so you're having equality override their liberty. I don't think that's right. I also think when we get to litigation, you're going to have the problem, which is a vendor who does not want to, whether it's T-shirts such as the Lexington issue or other things where it's somebody having to perform a wedding or take pictures or whatever, you're basically forcing that person to comply or they will be sued. And I don't believe that's right. Real quick, I think the main thing is I don't believe this is an issue the city should deal with. I said that when we talked about it. I said that we would end up with what we're having, which is a lot of contention and a lot of heated people on both sides. I thought it would take away from what we needed to do, and I believe that it has. I'll be honest with you, I believe that we shouldn't have divided the community over it, and what's going to happen for each of us is, and you always lose supporters when you take a stand on an issue, but on something like this, we'll lose people that, friends, acquaintances, etc., because people are not willing to separate those issues, so that makes it more difficult. I think we're basically just trying to legitimize a position. This is an issue in search of it's a problem that doesn't exist for the most part, and we're just trying to force a solution. And I believe there is a compromise that we could come up with for this issue, and I think the compromise would be either to put it, if you want to look at a compromise, I'm for not having it go forward, but you could compromise with some sort of a resolution, such as what the city attorney has drafted, or you could compromise by putting it on the ballot. But if we move forward with this, you're going to have a substantial group that's against it, and if we don't move forward with this, you're going to have a substantial group that's for it. So it's a difficult thing, and there's more to say, but that's enough.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowers.
Well, I know that the press has suggested I might be the swing vote, the vote to decide, and what I want to say tonight is I don't like to be thought of that way because you elected 5 of us up here, and I'm a person that really likes to weigh all of the information that comes in. I typically do that with everything in my life. And so I want you to think of us, all 5 of us, as a swing vote because we all have one vote and it counts the same. So when I see that in the paper, I hear people say that, or I have people emailing me thinking I'm the one. No, I'm not the one. I'm one of 5. I just happen to be one that considers it in great depth and at great length and listens to many voices and reads many, many, many emails. And what I would like to tell you is I have read all of those emails. I have not responded to every one of them. Sometimes I have to fight the urge to respond because I want to say something that I know is going to offend people. And somebody said something in this room the other night that I offended that person. And I want you to know I have offended people on both sides of the issue because I can see both sides of this issue. I want to tell you here tonight that my personal feelings about this are greatly different than my political feelings about this. I have many, many friends who are gay, lesbian, and a few that are bisexual. That has nothing to do with what I think needs to happen politically. And I'll go back to about 5 or 6 years ago when there was an issue before this commission in which I also had to determine, was I going to follow my personal preference or was I going to do what I thought was right politically? And it was when this commission passed a smoking ban in public places, public restaurants. I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke. I have asthma. I can't be around smoke. So all my life I've had to separate myself from friends that do smoke if I'm in a closed place. But I voted no on that smoking ban, not for me personally, not to satisfy what I wanted to happen because I like it now that it's smoke-free. But I voted no because I don't think it's government's place to interfere at that level, to go in and tell a business owner what he or she can or cannot do in their place of business. And so, when I come to this issue, and I've listened, and I've actually gone out and done more than listened, I've gone and actually solicited opinions from people who I think have good judgment, people that I greatly respect. And what I've learned is those people that I greatly respect, I find to be on both sides of this issue. I have gay, lesbian, bisexual friends who are opposed to this ordinance. I have gay, lesbian, bisexual friends who want this ordinance to pass. I have people that are not gay, lesbian, bisexual on both sides of this issue. And I have supporters who have voted for me on both sides of this issue. And so it's a very, very difficult decision. But I come back to my original position. And my original position is, I think we need to separate how we feel personally from what we do politically. And I think we need to consider what's good for us, not only in this community, but beyond this community. I've heard from people in this community. I've heard from a lot of people beyond this community, in the county, in the surrounding counties, in the county beyond the next county. So obviously it's an important issue to a lot of people, and I don't want to offend anyone, but I know I will offend everyone, because that's what happens when you're in government. I don't mean to do it, but I can't agree with a lot of the reasons that people are opposed to this. For me, this is not a moral issue at all. It has nothing to do with morality. It has to do with personal freedom. And I don't want to say that there's no discrimination, because I know for a fact that there is. I have suffered it. Okay? We've all suffered it. We've all been discriminated against. And I don't want to belittle the discrimination that takes place against gay, lesbian, bisexual people, because I know it's there. I've heard people use terms that aren't very pretty to describe people of different orientations. But again, I'm going to say what I said the very first time we had this conversation. In this term, this conversation has been before this commission many times before. It was here before I left the commission 4 years ago. So I know that it'll keep coming back until something is passed. But as long as the discrimination is equitably distributed in the population, then all we do when we create new protected classes is make things even more unfair. And I think you probably read a quote in the paper that I think those protected classes have outlived their usefulness. Now, I know that probably offends a whole lot of people, and I'm sorry about that, but just take the age class, for example. Over 40. Well, I've been a protected class now for 13 years, okay? But I've never had to use that protected class. Let me tell you why. You know, adversity makes people stronger, and those people that come up against adversity and they move on and they don't let it stop them, they don't let the unfairness stop them, they go on to succeed. And I can say that I think the best thing we can do in this community is for people that are gay, lesbian, bisexual, to step forward, be the successes that you are, and be models for younger people who need to see how to become successful. We can't legislate fairness. We just can't do it. We have to discriminate. We cannot make any decision without discriminating, and we're all going to discriminate differently. All right? That's just the way that it is. It's not about marriage. This has nothing to do with marriage. And that's another thing. I was told that this is being done in different cities as leverage to get same-sex marriage passed. Well, that's fine if that's what people want to do, but that's not what you elected me to do. You elected me to take care of sewers and potholes, and although this is much more interesting and it generates more conversation, same-sex marriage is not something that this commission has any control over, and I don't think that this commission should be used as leverage for that agenda. So it's not about morality, it's about what I consider to be personal freedoms, and I will defend anyone's right to be a bigot, okay? And I have heard some very bigoted comments in this whole debate, and I have to fight the urge to come back and quote scripture to some of those people that appear to me to be very bigoted. And I have to fight that urge. But we're not going to eliminate bigotry with laws. And bullying is a term I'm hearing all over the place now. It's a popular term. We're hearing it in psychology. Now we're hearing it in City Hall. Bullying is a fact of life. Is it good? No. Do people want bullying? No. People are not for bullying, and people are not for unfairness. But this issue has to be addressed at an individual level. And if you are a person that has a real problem with gay, lesbian, bisexuality, my challenge to you is to find someone that is, meet them, talk with them, get to know them, and change your attitude. It's not about passing laws, it's about changing attitudes, and I would encourage anyone that's gay, lesbian, bisexual to hook up with someone that is, and that's out there fully engaged and respected in this community, because we have a lot of those individuals in this community that are respected and are successful, and those people need to be models. I've had it said to me that when I said I don't see this discrimination any more so than I see other discrimination, I've had it said to me, well, that's because where you are in academia, it's not as prevalent. Well, let me tell you that nobody emerges from the womb and gets to academia. I can tell you I got to academia after 40 years of education. So successful people have to work at it. And if I see gay, lesbian, bisexual people at the highest levels in government, in elected positions, in academia, successful businessmen and women, I know that that type of discrimination, though it's not comfortable to experience, is no more prevalent than any other type of discrimination. And so, here is what I would like to do. Mayor, may I make a suggestion?
Of course.
I would like to suggest that we approve the ordinance drafted by the solicitor with an exception, with an amendment, and let me tell you what I think that needs to be. May I read it?
Sure.
Okay, the last section of this resolution states,
Can you tell me which one you're talking,
I'm talking about resolution,
The resolution or the ordinance?
the resolution.
Okay, because I thought you said
I
ordinance.
thought you said ordinance too.
I would like to recommend that we adopt the resolution that you drafted, Mr. Solicitor. But in that last section, I would like to read it with how I would like for it to be worded. Now therefore be it resolved this day that the Board of Commissioners of the City of Frankfort strongly supports the treatment of all individuals with respect and dignity, regardless of an individual's race, color, religion, national origin, familial status, age, disability, sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation, including but not limited to the areas of housing, public accommodation, and employment. And this is what I would like added, and you all can think about it if you like it, and resolves that as an employer, the City of Frankfort will not discriminate based solely upon these classes. So I would like the City of Frankfort to say that we will not discriminate based on this, and hopefully that will serve as an example that we're not going to do this, and we're urging that other employers not do it either. But let me assure you that when anyone goes into a job interview, there will be discrimination. You might be too fat, you might be too ugly, you might be too skinny, you might be too gay. You might wear too much makeup, you might not talk very intelligently. You will be discriminated against because somebody's going to get the job and somebody's not. So we just need to do our best, move on beyond obstacles, because obstacles make us stronger, makes us a better community. And until this issue came before us, I heard none of my gay lesbian friends complain that there was an issue. So that is what I would like to see us do, a resolution with that amendment to it.
Mayor, may I?
Of course. Oh, well, let me thank everyone for your patience and being respectful while everybody's talking. And if y'all will just keep that up, it'll be really good.
Yeah.
Because I know that if we have a decision and it goes one way or goes the other way, some folks will be happy, some may not be. So just, you can yell at us later, but not during the meeting if y'all don't.
Good Mayor.
Thank you.
Could I also add, I want to thank everyone that's communicated with me about this, and especially the LGTB, I can never get all the letters right, fairness group, because your all's concern and care is what I wish that everyone in the community had about some issue. I think too often we just sit back and we don't care what happens in government unless it affects us directly. And so I really admire your organization. the fact that you've worked together really hard on this, and I like the T-shirts. And so I really don't want to offend you. I thank you very much for all of your lobbying and also the people that lobbied in opposition. I really thank everybody because everybody's concerned about this issue. And, all right, that's all I wanted to say.
Commissioner Hedden.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I got 2 kids waiting on me to take them to a swim practice. So I'm going to be a little late for them. But I too would like to thank everybody for this, all the commissioners for their time and due diligence trying to read through these drafts. I personally support draft 1 versus draft 2. If it comes down that we have to have a resolution, I will support that being my last option for this. Draft 1 I prefer, however, it seems to lack any sort of enforcement, which many of our ordinances within our city already lack enforcement too. There is a typo that I found as well under 92.04 housing expectations. I believe it should say under number 3 that the last sentence from limiting the rental or occupancy of the lodging to its members or form, I think it should say from, giving preference to its members.
What'd you say, Commissioner Henry?
There's a typo under
Yes, ma'am.
92.04 under draft number 1, the last sentence, number 3. I think it should say from instead of form.
You're correct.
Okay, and that the other thing would be under 92.05, C, subsection 1, subsection B, that the YMCA, YWCA, I think officially now goes by the Y and not YMCA, which is what most of us know it as because that's what we grew it up as. I don't know if, well, I guess that's what I got. I don't know how, the penalties that are in draft 2, if that penalty section should get moved to draft 1. But I have to get my kids, I'm sorry.
Okay. Can I ask you one quick question?
Yes.
Okay, just like to be clear. When you're saying draft 1 versus draft 2,
Yes.
and adding 96.99, the penalty section,
Yes.
so, and I don't mean to ask you, I just want to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
The part about having a local human rights commission, do you support
We've
that?
tried that. We've been trying that for the last couple of years.
But if we have 3 votes to do it, if we have 2 other, are you supportive of that? If 2 other members will support?
I've been in support of trying to get one.
Okay, I just wanted to say, because if
Or
that would
reinstate
change.
what we already had. There's already a Human Rights Commission that was already there, but we just couldn't find it, I guess. And then it came to us, and then we got a new board. But,
Okay, I just wanted to clarify before you left.
yes,
And there is no current Human Rights Commission for the
Right.
city of Frankfort,
right.
because that ordinance was, it's no longer in effect. So
Yes.
you all would have to
Reinstate it?
reinstate that. That's correct.
Thank you, Commissioner, I didn't mean to delay you.
No,
And thank
you're
you for your
okay.
time.
And
We
I'm sorry.
We understand.
I'm sorry for the rush, but.
It's okay. We understand that. We all have families and we've all had children. Mine have just
No,
all
we
grown-
don't.
I was gonna say, well, except for you. You have your nieces and nephews.
I don't have any nieces.
Nephews. So I'll ask the solicitor a quick question, if y'all indulge me. If we reinstate the Human Rights Commission that we repealed a few years ago, and the reason we repealed it is because it had been inactive. It was put in place to deal with the urban renewal activities that took place previously
In the 80s.
in the 80s, and then we repealed it. So if we reinstate that, we can tweak that. It doesn't have to be, for example, if there's not support to put it in tonight for future ordinance, and if Commissioner Hedden is leaving, I guess Commissioner Haynes, will be up to you and myself to decide if we'll support the human rights, a local human rights commission with certain powers, and then would ask Commissioner Hedden, since she, I don't want to put words in her mouth. Can you play the tape back so we can see what she said? Just to see whether we'd be on that. And that would also allow us to move forward, and we can always have those as 2 separate, those could be 2 separate ordinances.
That's correct. I mean, you can, if the commission wanted to recreate the Human Rights Commission, it could do so. Previously, it was a joint city and county Human Rights Commission, And I think that's what delayed the prior commission from trying to recreate it was they were looking to work with the county to recreate a county and city human rights commission, and I don't know that we ever heard the county's final answer on that issue. But if the city commission wished to create a city human rights commission rather than relying on the state human rights commission, you have the authority to do so.
Okay, and further, just as a point of clarification, would be, we could also restrict local human rights cases, or, I shouldn't say cases, but complaints, to just sexual orientation and gender identity cases, and then further refer any other types of allegations straight to the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights.
That's correct. Just to restate, Mayor, you're correct. You could refer the traditional types of discrimination complaints to the State Human Rights Commission, and then you could create a local human rights commission that would only hear complaints concerning discrimination based upon LGBT.
Okay. And we could also further...
LGTB, excuse me.
And we could also further include that in with whatever ordinance we just proposed. It can all be rolled into one, or we can do them separately. And
that's correct.
And it's still going to be in the same, they would all still be in the same sections in the codes of ordinances, or was the Human Rights Commission that was previously, was it in section 92?
I would recommend that they do be in the same section, since there would be some interplay between the provisions.
Okay. And that's what I was going to recommend the commission, if we do that they all be in section 92 for consistency, and also any changes that need to be, I guess we would address also any amendments that needed corrections to typos. We would also do those at the same time.
Correct.
Because that's all in 92. Sorry, Commissioner Haynes, I just wanted to get those points of clarification out. I'm assuming you want to say something.
Yes, I definitely want to say something. I heard part of that, but I didn't want to be confused. So
sorry. I'm trying to make it...
Get the rest of it. First of all, I want to make a clarification, because somebody told me a while back something was written in the paper that didn't seem like it stated correctly. And it probably did, but it probably talked about more of a content instead of the context. And what it was that when I was talking about laws, if it wasn't for local, state, and federal laws, I would not be where I am today, because I would not have had the opportunity. And that goes without saying, but evidently they only read the second part when I was talking about the people. Now, people were there for me before the Civil Rights Act. They were there doing it, and they were there afterwards. What I was telling them, and what I meant to make clear that part, that's what made it real. One made it possible. The second one made it real. Because when you're out there and actually people are giving you some ideas that say you can do anything you want to do regardless of your color. Now also, I have supporters on both sides. But the one good part about not really being that concerned about my political career, I'm going to try to do what I think is best in every decision. I have supporters on both sides, and it's okay. I would love to have taken Lewis's idea and put it on the ballot to take me out of this.
Me too.
But it was one of those, after I had listened to and read countless emails and listened to the different information, it's one of those, I do believe in receiving as much information you can, planning for it, and then executing. Then that way, you don't miss any steps. So I didn't want to rush through it. I also went back and reflected on a lot of things because I had Christians on both sides, and I just want you to know, I said, I want to do what I think Jesus was doing. He always just showed love and compassion. So I'm doing that same thing. So I am voting for moving forward with the ordinance. Now, don't get me booted off the commission. I've only been here 6 months. I don't know all the rules yet. But it's one of those, I really I understood the resolution very well, because, it's so clear, crystal clear. And there is some work that has to be done, evidently, on the ordinance, because I'm hearing things that I can't really keep up with, can't process it. But I just think it would be the best thing for Frankfort at this time. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Haynes. And I think what I would think we can do is direct the city solicitor. And sorry, this may be clear as mud, but I know Commissioner Hedden said she supported draft 1, and Commissioner Haynes supports, I'm not sure that we can say draft 1 versus draft 2. I'll let you, but what I was going to support was going to be adding the provisions of a local human rights commission and put that and include that in Chapter 92 of the City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances. So if I could ask you that question, Commissioner Haynes, would you let me ask you one question? Or would you be okay with including a local human rights commission to deal with only the sexual orientation and gender identity issues, and then other cases be referred to Kentucky Human Rights Commission?
Right, I'd be okay with that.
And I think we should probably, to be fair to Commissioner Hedden, ask her first opportunity if she's okay with that, since I believe that's what she said in the commission meeting, but I don't want to put words in her mouth.
Let me make a recommendation, and that is certainly no vote can be taken on the ordinance one way or the other tonight.
Till we have a draft.
Because it looks to me like we've got a deadline. And also, we don't have an ordinance that's ready to be voted upon. So my recommendation would be to take the fair housing, public accommodations, and employment provisions that are already in our ordinance and tweak them so that it includes the sexual language that we've been discussing tonight.
Gender identity and sexual orientation.
That's correct. And then what I would do is I would take the ordinance as it's currently written, which provides for the investigation of complaints, and if the complaint cannot be resolved, then the complainant would file a complaint with the State Human Rights Commission. And that's where the hearing process would occur for the traditional forms of discrimination. So what I would do is I would take that ordinance and then add in a local human rights commission to deal with the LGBTB issues, because the local human rights commission would then have to hold a hearing to deal with those type of complaints, because of course the State Human Rights Commission does not have the jurisdiction to do so. Okay. Now, if we're going to do that, I will use the penalties that are currently set forth in the Fair Housing Ordinance, section of the ordinance book, and provide that to you all before the July meeting for you all to take a look at, because it may need further tweaking. Also, in addition to being able to file a complaint with either, if it's a traditional form of discrimination, with the State Human Rights Commission, if it's an LGBTB form of discrimination with the Frankfort Human Rights Commission, I will also include the remedy which allows you to sue directly or file suit directly in circuit court if you want me to do that, because that takes the human rights commissions, either state or local, completely out of the equation if you want to file suit directly in a circuit court, as our code currently provides for traditional forms of discrimination in fair housing only. So I'll include that, and then you all can tell me what you want to include and what you don't want to include. I think that you should know that there is a cost involved with having the local Human Rights Commission, and based upon the cost that we've seen from our most ethics hearing, Board of Ethics hearing, that cost substantially exceeds $1,500. So, and you were there, Mayor, and you knew what those costs were.
And one thing I think too, now I knew we couldn't vote tonight anyway, but I was saying to move forward on a draft.
Right.
I've request from one of our local ministers to make sure that we do include the exemption or talk about the exemption on religious organizations, and also under, like, the second draft, not under chapter 96.07. Make sure that
Both drafts do have protections for religious organizations.
so I just wanted to make
and
sure that
also
folks
charitable
understood that, to clarify that. And, go ahead, Commissioner.
No, you go ahead, finish. Well, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was saying, then we'll have the draft, and that will be a discussion again, folks, so you have another chance. For the July, what's the date on June?
With the other dates.
Work
Is it-
session, July 8th.
July 8th work session. So it'll be on the July 8th work session, and commissioners will have time to look at this ordinance. And we'll also make sure that we post it on the city's website and still take comments from folks. And if we don't feel like we have it right, we're not going to rush. We're going to make sure we do it and do it correctly, so everyone gets a chance to have input. And then we would vote on it. If after the July 8th work session, there's agreement, then we would vote on it on July the 22nd?
Be a
Right,
first reading.
this is the 22nd, would be the first reading. That's correct.
Okay. So does everybody understand? I know I'm just, if you don't understand, just raise your hand so I can make sure. Okay. I know it gets complicated. When we start dealing with legal ease, it gets more difficult. Okay, I'm sorry, Commissioner Roach.
So, Mr. Moore, so your suggestion is, rather than giving input now about possible problems with either one of these drafts, that's best to put together like you suggested and then do it at a later date?
If you have specific issues you want to raise now, and you want to discuss those now, that will give me a little bit more guidance in drafting what you all are going to
It'll
look
make it
at
easier for them to draft it.
Well, then
in July.
I got a couple of questions. I guess the first thing, and which one do you want to?
Number 2 would be the one that I would.
All right,
recommend.
96.01, and it may be that's, and I talked to you about this before, those last 4 or 5 lines, it seems to be hyperbole, and it just may be that's the way it's going to be, but it makes it look like if you're against this, that you're some sort of awful person. You know, it has words like menace, democratic institutions, secure the city of Frankfort against strife and unrest. I think that's hyperbole.
And that language would not have anything to do with the enforceability of this ordinance. My recollection is that may have come from
It came
the
from
city of
another.
Louisville
Yes, sir, it did.
draft.
Let me ask a question. Is there any objection to removing that language, since it does nothing to change the enforcement?
No objection.
So we can, you okay, Commissioner? Okay. So
I'm okay.
we will strike after, where did you say, Commissioner Roach?
Starting
After
with
the-
certain practices.
Yes, sir, that's it.
Okay.
I guess other questions is, we don't seem to have carved out much of, and it may be that's what we want, or others would want, but it doesn't look like we've carved out much of an exception on employment housing or business. Like, for example, if you own rental property, it looks like if you were in a duplex and you live next to the duplex, you wouldn't have to meet this. But it doesn't give any broader exception than that, and I would think that we would want to try to have broader exception for housing, particularly rental property.
There are certainly some exceptions in here. For example, you know, if you're a church and you have property that your own personnel stay in, then those are exempt from, that property is exempt from these provisions. If you're a religious institution and you're engaging in the commercial rental business and you have a 12-plex, you're going to be subject to the same rules as everyone else. If there's a specific specific question you have, such as where you have, certainly if you have a person owns a house and they rent a room in their house, they have the right to choose who they want in their house, and they would not have to abide by this ordinance.
I just thought it should be broader, but that's, is there a way to avoid through language this business issue? In other words, besides the Religious Restoration Act, is there a way to use language that keeps from having suits when people in business don't want to, whether it's be a photographer or for a wedding or whatever, and then they have the ability to be fined, and then if they refuse, then you go to court? Is there a way to carve that out besides that General Assembly language, or is that just going to be something that we'll just have to solve in the courts?
Certainly, that could be looked at more carefully. There are different ways you could do that. One, you could include a provision saying that frivolous complaints that they have no factual basis, if you file such a complaint, you would be subject to a penalty yourself. Or you could include a provision that says the prevailing party in any litigation would be able to recover attorney's fees from the non-prevailing party. That cuts both ways, though. That's the Scottish legal system right there. And what that does is, before someone files a complaint, they're going to be pretty certain of their position, and that would do away with frivolous complaints. But on the other hand, that could have a chilling effect from someone who's been discriminated against, but who doesn't have much financial wherewithal, and they'd be concerned they could. But perhaps what I could do is provide a brief summary of each section that you all could read, and then that might provide the commission opportunity to say, let's tweak this a little bit better. I understand this more. Let's tweak this and make it better. But I understand that concern.
Couple other quick things. So the possibility of using the Religious Restoration Act not to follow this is there, correct?
Yes, and
and you've included that.
That is
toward the end.
Included at 96.11, which is the general exception.
So basically, anybody who had a sincerely held religious belief, and of course that's all subject to an awful lot of interpretation, could not follow this.
If someone has a sincerely held religious belief that they engage in conduct which would be violative of this ordinance, then the city has the burden to prove by clear and convincing evidence that it has a compelling governmental interest in stopping the specific act or refusal to act. And I guess maybe one good example would be if someone says, well, I belong to the High Church of Marijuana. In my church, I'm supposed to smoke marijuana because it seems to be spiritually closer to my God.
I just laughed because I was trying to say, I'm sorry, I was
Which
looking
church
at
is that?
But anyway,
I'm sorry, I thought he said hallelujah.
No, there was a
sorry.
court case.
I'm sorry. Could we strike that from the record? I'm sorry.
But in that case, I think that the city would have a compelling state interest to stop people from smoking marijuana just because of all the problems that allegedly arise from marijuana, the fact that it's illegal, etc.
But what about on this issue?
But on this, again, you would have to look at the facts of the case, and someone could make that claim. Say, I have that's my sincerely held religious belief that I'm not going to provide housing to that person because I don't want to encourage that type of conduct. And unless the state has a compelling state interest, they could continue that conduct and would not be a violation of the ordinance. the Supreme Court certainly has certain rules with respect to how you review claims of discrimination, and the traditional claims of discrimination have I believe the Supreme Court uses strict scrutiny when it looks at those claims. I don't know that strict scrutiny would apply to LGBT just because it's not a protected category as determined by the Supreme Court.
So, and then the ability of a landlord to discriminate based on cohabitation would still exist, correct?
Correct.
Well then, real quick, so the penalties for not following this would be a fine or a year in jail?
Wow.
Under penalty 96.99, $500 or in prison not more than 1 year? Now, am I missing something?
That's what's under the current Fair Housing Code of Ordinance.
We're not changing that.
Shall be fined no more than $500 or in prison not more than 1 year or both. So, certainly that's a section that the commission could choose to tweak.
Well, I guess I, for one, would think that might be a little excessive. Being in prison for a year.
Well, and you see in the penalty section too, they've provided under B that if a plaintiff files a complaint and wins, then the plaintiff is entitled to recover his or her attorney's fees. But the same benefit is not afforded the defendant if the defendant wins. So that's another thing the commission may want to tweak.
And that's something we could talk about at the next meeting, I guess. But I may not be here, so that's why I was asking that. And then the Human Rights Commission would be the if we had that would be the mechanism by which this would go before. So this language here about the mayor or the fairness officer would no longer exist if you went that route.
You could still have a fairness officer or the mayor and still have a local Human Rights Commission, because the fairness officer or mayor would be the first level to attempt to mediate the dispute. They would get the parties together and say, can we resolve this?
Well, wouldn't it? Well, it would be cheaper, doesn't mean it's right, but it would be cheaper to just have it go to a particular staff member here and then have it then, in other words, not to have a Human Rights Commission, not to have a fairness officer, unless that was part of somebody's duties, not to go to the mayor. In other words, this looks to be a pretty complicated and expensive process.
In the community in eastern Kentucky, and I apologize, I believe Vico, they have a member of the commission that's appointed to basically act as the person that's going to resolve the complaint, and I believe they act as the hearing officer too, although I haven't looked at that in the last week or so.
Any further?
I think that's enough.
That can be your job, Commissioner, right?
Yeah. And I could say too, Commissioner, if any member can't be here, we certainly would take anyone's written comments at a commission meeting and certainly consider those when we're drafting making the final tweaks or drafts. So we'd certainly welcome that. Well, and before we move on, I don't know if I've really seen it done on a local level, but if we wanted to do like a legislative intent section and include some of the words from the resolution, would that also be, would we put, we're not going to do it tonight, but I was saying in terms of at the work session, if we included the language from the resolution, unless there's language in the resolution that members strongly object to, just as a consideration, to say it's the legislative intent and necessity, or the Board of Commissioners finds and declares, something like that language.
Like the first whereas?
Well,
The first section?
all of it. Not that, but we wouldn't say therefore be it resolved, but just say the Board of Commissioners of the City of Frankfort, and I'm doing this right now, so it may change, but the Board of Commissioners of the City of Frankfort finds and declares that whatever, or it is the legislative intent and necessity of the City of Frankfort, or this ordinance, and then provide those thoughts. Just something to think about. I'm just giving you all, everybody heads up that we won't have that in there now, but I would propose, I'll probably bring some language forward.
I can just meld this in.
Okay,
you
and
all
if you don't like
strike
it, you
or
can
not strike it.
just take it out, just strike it. But at least it's already there. If there's no,
That's fine.
okay, thank you. Anybody else want to, are you ready to move on?
Yes,
Okay. Next item is
I
10.
have a piece of old business.
Oh, you haven't, okay, sorry, go ahead.
It's kind of in the form of a question for us to think about. We had an issue in January or February that brought up in my mind a question, and we discussed. And so every time I look at this statement that I'm going to see a lot of more times before we leave this office, where we authorize the mayor to file an application and to authorize the mayor to file subsequent documents. Here's my question for discussion. Can we not do this so that we authorize the mayor to file the application, and then can the authorization to sign subsequent documents appear on the consent agenda calendar? Because here's my question. Back in January or February, whatever the issue was, what you were required to sign actually brought forth the issue of a policy change or a possible policy change. And I think the solicitor looked into it, and we, I guess, had a policy sort of already. But is that potential not always there if we authorize the mayor to sign subsequent documents later on? That he could be signing documents that actually create policy? So here's my question. Could we, every time these things happen, authorize the mayor to sign the application or to submit the application, and then later, when documents come before the mayor to sign that have to do with that application that happened 6 months ago, could those documents, could that then appear on the consent calendar so that we avoid any instance where we might actually be changing or setting policy with those documents? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
There are a couple of things. From a legal and administrative perspective, I think there are some times, for instance, where you all authorize a new upgrade to the sewer system. And as a part of that, the city needs to obtain easements. And sometimes that requires the filing of condemnation suits. From Bill Scout, the sewer department's perspective, if he can get authorization to initiate that project, hire the contractor, and get authorization for the mayor to sign all related documents, then that helps that project move forward in a more expeditious
Right.
and
Yeah. But my thing is sometimes
but where there
expedited-
are like grant documents
Right.
where it's going to require a change to maybe our fair housing policy or something, I think that in that situation it would make sense for, if the grant is going to require a change in a policy, that be brought to you either after the grant application's approved. But the problem is that needs to be done in a timely manner, because sometimes the grant's approved, and Rebecca, you may want to help me on this, but it's approved on one day, and we're told that we've got to get all the information into them in a very short turnaround, and it can be difficult to get all that additional supporting documentation together. But
if there's going to be any kind of policy change, we do bring that to you, but the reason that we have that in there, authorize any documents with the grant, a lot of times it can be like a reimbursement statement that will turn, if we have to come to you all every time we do something like that, literally I would have as many items as Bill Scout has on. the
No, I know
agenda.
that a lot of this, yeah, I understand that some of those documents are things that we would not even want to take a look at, just.
Right.
But there was that one instance where it was a potential change of policy through the mayor signing a document that really we had no vote on. So is there any mechanism, I guess the mayor's the best one to answer that question, but Mayor,
I'm sorry, I was talking.
no, that's okay.
I think one of the concerns.
Mayor, and I'm not trying to say, Mayor, I don't want you to sign any documents, I don't trust you, but here's the thing, let's pretend that you've been authorized to sign all the documents pertaining to some application that we've authorized you to do 6 months ago, and now because you have our authorization, you feel that you must sign this document. Have you ever, thought, this actually is a policy change, let me take it to the commission? I mean, has that ever happened?
One of the
Because it
things-
definitely was an issue in that January, February meeting.
I think there needs to have checks and balances in place,
Uh-huh.
and before any staff member is allowed to, or they're supposed to, before anything comes into my office for signature, it's supposed to be reviewed by the city clerk and the city attorney to make sure it's on the proper form and that it has been adopted by the commission or authorized by the commission. And that is a checks and balances. So I don't know in terms of, probably it's, as the city solicitor said, it's probably more of an issue for staff to expedite things, but sometimes if it, and I think we've called out a couple of documents that hadn't been approved and I wouldn't sign them, the city clerk returned them because.
Because it did.
That doesn't mean though, my concern is always to make sure that we're following what the commission has approved and that we don't accidentally
Create a new policy.
by that. So there's always that concern, and we try to watch that.
And maybe, and I don't know if Rebecca could do this, Mayor, but perhaps on a grant application, we can make sure to review the documents that will have to be submitted if we get the grant. And I think the document Commissioner Bowers is referring to was an affirmative action plan.
It was.
It slightly revised what we already had in place. Really, it just, I guess, brought it up to current standards. Yeah, so.
And this could be an issue to further discuss with.
Well, I just wonder, I wanted to
with
put it out
staff.
there to think about, because I'm hoping that there's something in place that allows you, Mayor, to ask the question, they authorize this, but, I don't think this is really part of what they thought was going to happen, and but that's only one perspective, and maybe you think that we would think it was okay, and we really wouldn't. So is there just some mechanism that, that we could do to ensure that we're not changing? And I mean, this is kind of we do this all the time. We authorize all the time, and we've always done it, and I don't know why I'm just now asking the question after years and years. But I did ask the question whenever it was January or February, and now every time I read one in an agenda, I always have this little question mark. I wonder what the documents are going to be subsequently, and I wonder if they're going to be okay. And so I would just feel more comfortable if anything of any substance that could affect policy could then be on a consent calendar later on, because with consent, it's just there to be approved unless somebody has a problem with it. I realize that there might be a time issue though, but.
I mean, I usually run it, like the mayor said, I usually run it through Ramona and Rob before anything gets signed, if I have any questions about it.
So you determine that it's not a change in policy, basically?
Well, I will review it for legal content to make sure it's not putting the city in a bad position. What might be helpful is when, like this resolution here, perhaps we could list the documents that the city's going to have if we get that grant, so that you can, and I guess that'd be a second page, so it would list the documents that would be a part of the receipt of the grant monies, and then you can say, I'd like to look at this later when it comes in. And that could be added as a separate item.
Do they ever throw in surprise documents to be signed? Do they ever, 3 months later, you get a surprise document that you didn't know was going to be part of the deal that they need you to approve?
Not normally. Usually it's just standard assurances and that kind of thing.
And to further add, Commissioner Bowers, I watch it. That doesn't mean, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for anyone else holding this office in the future, but I did kick out something the other day, and I questioned on a, well, it's tourism board, on a procedural, and it's making sure that I understand what the statutes require and what the ordinances are, and then also the intent of what the commission adopts. And even on the items that I don't support, I have to still sign those in a timely manner. I've done so, but between department heads, city clerk, and the solicitor and myself, we're constantly watching to make sure that they do conform.
Okay.
But as a checks and balance method, I think it is important to make sure that if you have concerns, that we do put those, if it needs to be put in a new policy or an order, that we can work with staff to address.
I just think it might be a good idea, and not to take away from your decision-making or that you use good judgment, not that at all, but, you know, we can all have different opinions about things.
Absolutely.
It just, anyway, I think it might be good if we had some mechanism whereby something comes in down the road, that it can just be on a consent where we can just, in case there is something.
And the city manager said he's taking notes, and we will review that.
I see him taking notes.
He did, he wrote. And we can have further discussion.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good question.
Just waiting for other old business.
Okay, anyway, any other old business, Commissioner Roach?
Yeah, a couple of things. I would ask that if the commission's all right with it, I would ask that the city manager get with the planning department, codes, that type of thing, and come to us with a deadline for the OY project. I know that all of us have probably met with them individually, and I think that we need to give them a deadline with certain parameters as far as financing, when starting, et cetera. In other words, that's gone on for years and years and years, and I think that we need to have a deadline to where it's either going or it's not. I didn't know what the rest of the commission thought.
Is there any objections?
I don't have an objection. I guess I'm just thinking, I've been over there and I know there's some plans for them to change it into I guess kind of like a little restaurant thing. A hotel, and I'm not really sure how long that's been going on.
Long time.
So I'm just trying to figure out what the codes are going to do. So I'm processing it right now. I don't have an objection, I'm just processing it.
Is that you? I think just the intent would be for the commission to try to encourage, well, not try to encourage,
Have a deadline.
and have a deadline and say, you
Yeah.
got to meet this deadline.
It would be torn down if we followed code.
Correct.
And we have extended it and extended it and extended it, and I think with good reason, which is there's a great plan there to do that. But if it's not gonna happen, we need to finally take care of it. It's been, I was in the old Y in the 60s, and then I was there in the late 70s. It's had a lot of challenges for a long time. And so I hope they can do what they want to do and put in a really boutique hotel with restaurant, and that would be great. But if it's not going to happen, then I think we need to get rid of it.
And city manager said he will address that starting tomorrow.
All right. I had
Another one?
another one real quick. We talked about the auctioning of or looking at a real estate appraisal, possible auctioning of that property out on Leonard Wood. I would ask that the city manager, once again working with the planning department, identify other potential property we own that perhaps could be sold, not to say that we would sell it, but perhaps could be sold. And if in fact that we ended up going that route, that might be wise, because sometimes you own property that you're never going to use and have no use for. And I would also include in that grouping what parcels we have left at the Carpenter Farm, so that we can, and I know we're working on that as well, so that we can really start marketing that to a much greater effect. See what everybody thinks about that.
Any objections to that?
No objection.
No.
Okay. Any other new business?
I got it.
I mean, sorry, old business.
got
Did you have
another?
another? Okay,
Yes,
good.
sir, I'm sorry. The KCDC Industrial Park, I would ask that the city manager once again get with planning and with the head of KCDC, Kim Smith, I believe, and find out what the exact zoning is for the industrial park and what are ways in which perhaps we could broaden that zoning or take a look at broadening that zoning, because the way it is currently zoned, you're not going to have any more, for the most part, you're not going to have any more construction out there, because the purpose that it's zoned for is often office, and nobody's going to put an office back on that industrial park because nobody can see it.
Is there somebody from planning?
So-
I'd like to see him. Okay. I was going to try to get you an answer now. But we don't have anybody from planning right now. If they were here.
Robbie Ingle's gone.
Okay, sorry.
That's all right.
And I will also report, I've tried also to reach the contact at CSX, and I spoke to one person, and I got referred to another one, and have not been able to get that one.
I don't think you'll probably never get them. I appreciate you for trying.
I'm going to try again.
Another thing on an old business is I would like for the city manager working with some of the departments, I'm not sure which department it would be, to contact some private companies regarding energy, where they come in and give you a quote on, basically they will come in and look at everything, and they will fund your infrastructure and then take the lion's share of the energy savings. Just want to see what that would look like, what the cost would be, and what maybe we could get.
Any objections? You're getting
I mean, I know I can't believe it, to tell you the truth. Last thing on the whole business that I've got is on the parking, not to put the chief back on that with the downtown, but I wasn't here for the last discussion on that, but I wondered if we've thought about, or we want to think about, having some mechanism or some authority over there in downtown that works on enforcement, works on proper or if it's possible, utilization of the parking garages, and does all of that in some sort of a fashion to where we're really maximizing open parking so that we can get more people going downtown to shop and those kind of things. I know we've talked about that for years, but I don't know if that's something that a parking authority might be best suited for. I just don't know, but I understand that we don't want him to investigate any further as far as having a private company enforce the parking laws. But this whole idea of proper trying to get people to utilize parking in a way that maximizes business and maximizes people's ability to go downtown, we've been talking about it for years, and I just wonder if there's not a way to do better than we're doing now. And I'm hoping the chief has a lot of good ideas.
I'm working on my excuses, I'm walking.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yes, sir, there is actually. Really, we can work with the partners downtown, DFI, individual merchants. We have some who have some specific complaints and some who have general complaints. And also working with our vendor at the parking garage, because they do have some good ideas. Good. And the idea is to, like you say, push that parking toward either the garage that the city runs or the privately owned garage. So the first thing will be the enforcement. And we're going through a process now to hire another part-time enforcement officer. So ramping up enforcement will be number one. Number two will be collection of the fines that we have outstanding, and then working with our downtown partners to make sure that the plan that we're executing will achieve what we're looking for. Because downtown, the face of downtown is going to change quite a bit here when the Judicial Center opens up. So now's a good time to kickstart a new plan.
Okay.
So we're working on that now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any other old business?
No more old business.
Anyone else have old business? I wish I had something I needed to get done.
It's a good time to do it.
I'll think of something, we'll come back. All right, any new business? We have item 10.1, and that's to authorize the award of a contract to Debbie Rogers Company for construction of a 10 million gallon above ground storage tank and a 20 million gallons per day pump station at 1100 Kentucky Avenue, and to authorize the mayor to sign all documents related to the project. This is, the original contract was $7.3 million. This will come out of account number 300.68.54390, and the budget for this account has 14 million and a half in it, and as of April 30th, 3.5 million had been expended or encumbered. The construction is expected to be completed in 15 months, and is estimated that approximately $5.5 million was spent during 2013 to 2014 fiscal year, with the balance expended during the 2014-2015 fiscal year. Are there any questions on this item? If not, we'll entertain a motion for approval.
We move approval.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Bowers, second by Commissioner Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call roll.
Commissioner Roach?
Yes.
Commissioner Haynes?
Yes.
Commissioner Bowers?
Yes.
Mayor May?
Yes. Thank you. Next item, 10.2, is to determine whether the city wishes to repurchase Lot 2B-3. God, I wanted to say, or not 2B. And the Carpenter Farm from Dr. Evelyn Clark. I know, I didn't do it. I didn't say it. I just said I wanted to.
You said enough.
So, the question would be, you all understand this was, initially was purchased, and now would be a question if we want to buy it back, and the city sold the property to Dr. Clark for $150,000, and pursuant to the terms of the applicable restrictions, has the right to repurchase the property for the amount of $142,500. So that would be the impact of the city, $142,500.
Well, my answer is no.
Well, if nobody makes a motion, then it just dies.
Well, can I ask a question?
Commissioner Bowers.
Does anybody know the answer? How likely is it that we could make a huge profit by turning around and selling again?
Commissioner Bowers, I would direct you to all the other things that we have owned and how our profitability has gone on those things. I would direct you to the parking garage being exhibit A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So my guess is, we're not very good at,
Getting rid of it.
we're not very good at
Well, there's
selling
Commissioner
things.
Stumbo. She remembers when we tried to get rid of it before,
Well,
right?
she's laughing, so.
We did try really hard, didn't we?
Okay, I'm going to rule since there's no...
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
She's
I'm moving this along. Since there's no motion for approval, that it does not get approved. And if you change your mind later, we can always put it back
no,
on.
we're fine.
All right, 10.3 under new business, we took 7.19 from consent calendar. Gotta find it. And it is for... Bear with me. It's a lot of page turning. This is for purchase of a vehicle for E911. And Commissioner Roach, since you asked for it to be taken off and discussed, I will recognize you for discussion.
Well, I talked to Mr. Rambo today, and he's very informative. I guess I just had a couple of quick questions that I'm a little hazy on, and I bet he can probably just answer them. Maybe.
Sure.
He looks like it.
He looks ready.
Yes, he does.
And I think most of mine are clarifications. There are 3 vehicles used for this purpose, correct?
Yes, sir.
And those vehicles are, you have your gear in the back, and they haul a trailer as needed. And those vehicles are on call 24 hours a day. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right. Are those, and we have bought a used vehicle in the past, and you're wanting to get a new vehicle this time because?
Just to replace one of the used ones that is high mileage. It was purchased used several years ago. It's probably lived its useful life a couple of times over, and just to replace it.
Okay.
And per our discussion too, I did look, you mentioned used vehicles. That's fine. The same vehicle going back to even 2010 is about, even a 2010 with, I've got bunches of quotes with about 50,000 miles, is still about $10,000 over state price contract price.
Right, and I found that out on another one this today. You're exactly right, so I appreciate you doing that. Let me ask you, are these vehicles taken home? Y'all take these vehicles home?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then what are they used for when they're home? Are they used for personal use or
No,
just?
sir. No, sir.
Okay,
No,
they
sir.
just sit where they're.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. They're used to respond after hours to whatever the call or disaster may be. It could be.
Could be anything.
Absolutely. A lost person in the woods or a big storm where we're out doing damage assessment. I mean, there's lots of different examples.
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll entertain if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I move for approval.
Moved by Commissioner Haynes,
Second.
second by Commissioner Roach. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk please call roll.
Commissioner Roach?
Yes.
Commissioner Haynes?
Yes.
Commissioner Bowers?
Yes.
Mayor May?
Yes, thank you. All right. We want to, before we conclude,
I've got one more new business.
oh, I'm sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
It's okay, go ahead.
Okay. Under new business, one thing I would like for us to start doing is, first off, I'd like for the city manager to get us the policy that the city follows as far as rewarding Frankfort companies, Frankfort contracts. And I would like to review that, have the commission review that. I think this is one of the most important things that we will address, and that is, I believe that we are not taking full advantage of rewarding contracts to Frankfort companies and creating jobs. And I believe we need to do a better job of that. And I'm sure many people have done well at it, but I think we could do a lot better. And I also think that we may want to look at changing the policy, because I also think there's an aspect of nurturing that we could do. And that is, it may be that a company can't meet the parameters 100%, but they could meet 80%, and then they could sub out that portion so that we could nurture that company. It could grow, get more jobs, be better at that, and then expand. I noticed today that just, when you read these things on the consent agenda, there are hardly any Frankfort firms on hardly anything. I think we could do better. I think we need to know the facts, which I don't know all of them yet, and then see if we can come up with a policy that can nurture Frankfort businesses. I just don't see the point in spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands, in fact millions of dollars, on out-of-town firms if we can nurture and have Frankfort firms do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Roach. And so you'll get the updated policy that
I have an ordinance that was emailed to me today, and I'll forward it tomorrow. We have an ordinance on local preference.
Right, okay, when you said you had it emailed.
To me today.
You're saying Rob mail, I'm sorry, because that confused me that you'd have it. It's already on our books.
Angie?
We do have an ordinance, but there's supposed to be a policy that's written.
Okay.
I received the ordinance today from Angie Dispinet, and I will forward that tomorrow.
Okay, great. Any other, before we make the closed session, I just want to check, is there any other? Okay, and just, again, on behalf of all the commissioners and myself, we want to thank our staff for all the wonderful work they did on the budget, but also on the program that Audia Group sponsored with the pavilion. All of our departments pitched in on that. Every department was involved on that. Our department heads in Parks and Recreation continue to do wonderful things in that department, things that make a huge difference in our community. And we thank you all, every department that was here, that worked on that. Thank you so much. And I know that those of us that will be able to use that park for many years with our children and grandchildren, or nephews.
I am discriminated against.
I singled you out. And thank you all so much. And also, I received a letter from Danny Belcher from Task Force Omega of Kentucky thanking our police department for the safety and the escorts for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Program that they did in May. Looking for the date. But again, they said that Frankfort treats them better than any other community and thanks our police department. So Chief, thank you. And all the others that worked on that, again, thank you so much. And with that,
I move we go into closed session for KRS 61.810 for litigation.
sub 1, sub C.
Second.
Yes, that would be.
Moved by
sub
Commissioner
one.
Bowers, second by Commissioner Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Roach?
Yes.
Commissioner Haynes?
Yes.
Commissioner Bowers?
Yes.
Mayor May?
Yes.